You are listening to the Billy Dees podcast.
We are waiting just a minute for everyone to engage the live stream. Remember, you can find the Billy Dees podcast on your favorite platform.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream. So glad you are here. We wait just a second for everyone to refresh their browser, their app, whatever it is they have to do. We're about a minute in. So we're going to go ahead and start. I'll do the formal introduction of Cynthia here in just a moment. And thank you for checking us out live on X. All right, we're going to pause, and we're going to go ahead and begin. Thank you. All right, well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. You can find the Billy Dees podcast anywhere podcasts are found. We have about a 10-year history in all the major platforms. With me tonight is Cynthia Elliott. Cynthia.
Hey, Billy, what's going on?
Yeah, you don't have your usual setup today because you're in New York, right?
Yeah, I'm in New York for graduation, so I'm on the road.
How are things in New York politically?
Cold. Oh, sorry.
Cold. Cold.
It's cold. I'm not even kidding. It was like 60 degrees today, and apparently it was 100 for like 5 days, and then suddenly
I was going to say there was like record temperatures there. Because I'm in Ohio, we've had record temperatures, and all through the Northeast, it's been blazing hot.
Yeah.
I was actually in Georgia earlier this week, and it was hotter in Ohio than it was in Georgia.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. Politically, it's weird. New York has a strange vibe right now. It really does. And I've spent so much time for decades here, but it's been giving me. I've been getting this essence of right before 9/11 for the last couple of weeks, which I don't say lightly, and and that did not change when I was in New York. I mean, meaning the city.
Yeah. Well, I know the politics with the mayoral candidate has caused a lot of talk. I don't know. It's one of those things. I don't know enough about the situation with this particular candidate. I don't think it has anything directly to do with the fact that he's Islamic. I think it has to do with he's got some radical positions, like abolishing the police is
of
something.
Course.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, I'll tell you. I Chris Rock did a routine one time, and this is the litmus test. If you want to talk about who's doing the harm in society, when you walk up to the ATM machine late at night, and you look over your shoulder, who are you looking for? Are you looking for the police to do you harm in that situation? Are you looking for Trump to do you harm in that situation? Probably not. I just don't, we're in this situation now where you criticize anybody of any religious or ethnicity, you get called a phobic of that type. And his positions are, I think, what's concerning people. And I haven't researched this New York situation long enough to speak intelligently about it, but that's from what I've been gathering online. That's what I'm getting. Before we get started, I do want to do a shout out. I want to do a shout out to Stacy Rogers. Do check out that interview in our playlist. You can find our playlist anywhere you find the podcast. And she is a Republican, I should say, a Republican candidate for the governor of Kansas. And she gave us a wonderful interview. Lots of listens on that one. Do check that out in the playlist. Okay.
Yeah. I have to say really quick in regards to New York, really fast. I find the Democrats and the people that they're pushing forward to be incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
It's There's no plan, there's no organization. It's just like who whatever can stick up like a nail, whether no matter what they say, as long as it's getting them attention. They seem to be supporting, and they're dangerous. They are, and I know that's my opinion, but it's the truth.
No, it is the truth. Their strategy seems to be the same one that lost them the election. And here again, if you're new to the program, I'm not necessarily a partisan. I'm not a pro-Trump guy. Not in the context of politics. I don't have any feelings about him one way or the other. I don't know him. But in terms of strategy, the Democrats did a good job of losing that election by championing these absurd societal norms, the gender and race constantly becoming an issue, and the villainization of Trump. And what all of that does is it doesn't cultivate a candidate. Like these guys or not, people voted for Bill Clinton. People voted for Barack Obama. And in the last 10 years, especially, we've had what is called the anti-vote. Our guy isn't as bad as yours. The anti-Hillary vote did a lot to help Trump in 2016. And then the climate switched. And the anti-Trump vote is largely what ushered in Biden. And then it switched. And the anti-Biden vote is what got Trump in 2024. So the Democrats haven't had somebody to actively vote for in a long time. Okay. We're going to talk about Scum today and people being your daddy. Let's go with Trump. He was asked, I believe this was at a NATO meeting. No, it was asked about NATO partners. Let me qualify that. And this was the question, and this is how he answered it. And for those of you checking out the video, be sure to watch Marco Rubio in the background.
It's from Sky News. Mark Rutte, the NATO chief, who is your friend, he called you daddy earlier. Do you regard your NATO allies as kind of children?
No, he likes me. I think he likes me. If he doesn't, I'll let you know. I'll come back and I'll hit him hard, okay? No? He did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy.
Okay. The question was posed in the context of NATO, where I got a little confused there, is do the NATO partners look to the United States as like a big daddy, and does Trump consider them children? That's probably a little strong, but the fact of the matter is that the NATO partners, if something really bad would go down in the world somewhere, it's the United States that's going to do the heavy lifting. I mean, and it's that simple. And a lot of questions have come up about should NATO partners be funding or helping the United States, with its expenses, because there's huge expenses with the military and staffing and maintaining bases around the world. So, I'm kind of on the fence about this. If you start doing that, though, if you start saying, hey, you guys have to take care of yourself, you also lose the very powerful voice that you have in Europe. So what say you, Cynthia?
Yeah, no, I'm really kind of tired of America playing policeman for the entire world, but I kind of also understand it because America really is kind of the heartbeat of humanity on the planet. And when we start to accept like too much funds and support, it will come with telling us what to do. And that's kind of a catch-22. We maintain a level of autonomy by bearing it ourselves that allows us to go in, do what we need to do, and get out without too much chatter from the other side. So, I don't know. I could go back. I can go back and forth on this topic because I really do. I like that we play that role, but I don't think we can continue to afford to play that role. And it begs the question of if they do fund us, does that mean that they're going to get involved in the choices we make?
Yes, this getting back to the child scenario. This is like telling your child, "Hey, you're 21. Get out of the house. We're not supporting you anymore." And the 21-year-old goes on his or her way, and all of a sudden the 21-year-old is doing whatever they want. It's not something you want them to do, and you start telling them, and they're going to say, hey, hell with you. I'm out on my own. I'm going to do what I want. When they're under your roof, you can say, as long as you're under my roof, you're going to do A, B, and C, but you can't do that when they're not. So it depends on what you want. Do you want the responsibility of managing this child's life, or can you deal with the fact that they're going to go on their own and it may not be where you want them to go? So that's the kind of situation that we're dealing with there. The other one I wanted to talk about is the remarks about Trump talking about the media, and he uses the word scum. And this has to do with the characterization of how successful the strike was in Iran. Now, let me say this objectively speaking. These, what are called bunker buster bombs, the way they work is they remain intact. They have a kind of like throwing a dart into a soft board. They go a certain depth. And once they're under the ground, then they detonate. So when you just look at the surface, it's very hard to know for sure what happened underneath. So therefore, the intelligence can be slow in coming out. Sometimes you don't have definite A, B, C. This was all destroyed for weeks later. And that's true no matter what. If you want to believe that Trump knocked it out, fine. If you want to believe that it was a bust and didn't do anything, that's fine too, but it's simply too early to tell. Okay. Now, with that being said, a lot of the media was running with some of these reports that the bombs didn't do that much. Okay. So Trump is reacting to a lot of the way certain media groups really ran with this as the narrative, as it was a failure. So now he's touting it as a success. I don't know how much you can do that. Now you can make the argument he has access to classified information that the rest of us don't. But I would imagine between Israel and the United States, we'll probably have a better feel, or at least the governments will. What they, let us know is another thing entirely. But probably within about 2 weeks, the governments of Israel and the United States will probably have a pretty good idea of how successful those were. In the meantime, this is Trump talking about how the media dealt with this.
This was an unbelievable hit by genius pilots and genius people in the military, and they're not being given credit for it because we have scum that's in this group. And not all of you are. You have some great reporters, but you have scum. CNN is scum. MSDNC is scum. The New York Times is scum. They're bad people. They're sick. And what they've done is they're trying to make this unbelievable victory into something less. Now, even they admit that it was hit very hard, okay? But it wasn't hit hard. It was hit brutally, and it knocked it out. The original word that I use, I guess it got us in trouble because it's a strong word. It was obliteration.
Okay, here again, we don't know. My guess is they did do a lot of damage. How much is another thing entirely. And I know there's been some conjecture about where the uranium deposits were. The real issue was the development. It takes a lot of processing to create fission. So there's a lot of variables here. Now, with that being said, getting back to the bunker buster bombs, and this is something I haven't heard too many people speak about. It's one thing to go underground and explode. It's another thing to go underground at the correct depth. Mm-hmm. So, when you have a bomb that's capable of going, 200 feet, whatever, underground or farther, sometimes you can go too far down. So, it's just too early to tell. But with the amount of explosions that were sent there, I can't believe that something wasn't damaged. What is your take on this, Cynthia?
Well, I would say that the results, we won't know So the actions that were taken were incredible. I mean, the fact that they were able to keep them secret is just a tremendous success on its own. They went in, they got out without harm to our people. Huge wins all around. The fact is that we don't know every single thing that's going on in that country and where they store everything and where, we don't have all of those details. The fact is it was a success and it brought people to the peace table. To have talks. So I think it's a huge win for Trump. I think it's a huge win for Pete Hegseth, who has literally been given an incredibly difficult time by the media. They've just been just ugly and brutal. But my biggest issue with the whole thing is, and I think I just wish if I could educate people on anything that I learned in my 25 years of working with media, is that whenever they're bitching about something, it's because they want your attention, because the only way for them to make money is with your attention. And Fox News has really dug itself in as kind of the media outlet for the Republican Party. And the rest of them sold their souls 16 of the last 20 years to become the ass kissers of the Democrat Party. And now they're left with the only way to get attention is to dramatize or find something negative to say about every win that comes in. Like, it's so predictable at this point that I've actually stopped watching news across the board. I don't want to hear it. I don't care, because I know what they're going to do. They're going to find anything that they can to just rip it apart. And, I'm a big fan and supporter of our military, and it would be just so nice to see, the liberal media actually appreciate people like our police departments and our military. The Democratic Party is just so anti all the things that have made the country what it is to this day and what the rest of the world depends on. So those are my thoughts. I'm congratulating Trump and Pete Hegseth and the entire military. I thought it was beautifully done.
I'll tell you what, that's a perfect lead into this next clip. Let me go ahead and play it.
Because you, and I mean specifically you, the press, specifically you, the press corps, because you cheer against Trump so hard, it's like in your DNA and in your blood to cheer against Trump, because you want him not to be successful so bad, you have to cheer against the efficacy of these strikes. You have to hope maybe they weren't effective. Maybe the way the Trump administration has represented them isn't true. So let's take half-truths, spun information, leaked information, and then spin it in every way we can to try to cause doubt and manipulate the public mind over whether or not our brave pilots were successful. How many stories have been written about how hard it is to, fly a plane for 36 hours?
Yeah, that's just the point that you were making. The refueling, he goes on there to talk about the refueling, the amount of time that those pilots had to sit in those planes, the danger involved. Those are all good points, and they don't touch on that.
Yeah. And on another note, really quick, I just have to say this. It was so nice to see, I don't think the Democratic Party ever has truly appreciated our military. Look what they tried to do to it for the last 20 years. When you look at somebody like a Raising Cane giving that briefing, I mean, my heart and soul as an American was warmed to see such a powerhouse delivery from one of our military men. I think they could celebrate. I don't know. Wouldn't it be nice for a change?
It sure would. And you were speaking about Fox News. Fox News, in terms of ratings, isn't what it once was, but the other ones are really suffering. And cable news in general is in bad shape. Now, you mentioned some of the other networks. There was a time going back 10 or 15 years ago that CNN, they were the good guys, right? They were boring, but they were the good guys. You had MSNBC that was always out the window to the left. And, of course, Fox was always right-leaning, although I will defend them in that they did have a real news show. And then they had opinion shows, which were clearly identified as conservative. See, I don't have a problem with that. Rush Limbaugh always used to say, I'm a conservative guy, and these are conservative viewpoints. And a lot of times he would explain something that was happening in government and then give his take on it. I don't have an issue with that at all. What I do have is an issue with people like Jake Tapper who come on and speak like this, so sophisticated and talk about things as if it's the divine truth, and he's presenting it as unbiased news, but it's his effing opinion. That's the kind of thing that makes me nuts, And then he goes ahead and writes this book about how the Biden administration kept his real condition a secret. No, they didn't. Everybody knew it, and he was part of the group that was gaslighting everybody and saying, "Oh no, this is like a Joe Scarborough. This is the best Biden ever." Yeah, right, sure. So anyway, that's what I have a problem with. Now I'm gonna play another clip from Pete Hegseth, and then I'm gonna ask you something about Pete. And I'm gonna go somewhere with that. That's a little different. Pete was asked, Mr. Hegseth was asked, how come he didn't give proper acknowledgement to a female pilot?
Oh, yeah, this pissed me off.
Acknowledge the female pilots that also participated in this mission. The early messages that you sent out only congratulated the boys.
So when I say something like our boys and bombers, see, this is the kind of thing the press does, right? Of course, the chairman mentioned a female bomber pilot. That's fantastic. She's fantastic. She's a hero. I want more female bomber pilots. I hope the men and women of our country sign up to do such brave and audacious things. But when you spin it as, because I say our boys and bombers as a common phrase, I'll keep saying things like that, whether they're men or women. Very proud of that female pilot, just like I'm very proud of those male pilots. And I don't care if it's a male or a female in that cockpit, and the American people don't care. But it's the obsession with race and gender in this department that's changed priorities. We don't do that anymore. We don't play your little games. Yes, right there.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. I want to be very clear about this. I agree with everything he said. 100%. I agree with Pete on this. Absolutely 100%. As a backdrop to this, now this is my opinion. I have nothing to go on this. He just doesn't blow me away. There's never a time that I'm watching him or listening to him and say, wow, this guy, there's just something that doesn't hit me. Now, in watching this, there's been a lot of mostly liberal women commentators, and they talk about his accusations of drinking and some of the things that he's allegedly done with women that weren't so hot. And they say his body language and the way he acts during these interviews is typical of a potential abuser or something of that nature. Now, I don't necessarily go that far, but I will say that this guy does not blow me away. I agree with everything he says on paper. I'm totally in line with him going after the press. I'm totally in line with him, combating against the gender and the identity politics. But I'm not necessarily blown away. Now, you are a little bit more of an intuitive than I am, and you have a history of what women go through. What is your take on this guy?
I don't dislike Pete Hegseth. I know a lot of people have really dwelled on certain aspects of him. I find it really interesting when they like people, particularly if they're Democrats. They don't seem to talk at all about the bullshit that they've done or the things they've been accused of in their history and their career, but make it somebody that they don't like, and they're going to find every single thing they can to highlight, and then overly highlight. Look, he got through. He got through. He was approved. Yeah. He's now got the job, and he's doing what he can to, and I said this in the beginning, one of the things is Trump will roll the dice on a lot of people that others would not have chosen. And I have a lot of respect for the reasons that we don't always know the reasons why he does what he does. We needed some pretty transformative change at the Department of Defense. Trump rolled the dice on Pete. I think he hasn't really been given it. He spent the vast majority of his time so far just defending himself against the constant attacks. I don't think he's had a chance to really warm up to it. As an intuitive, I'm not getting a signal, and I'm really good, especially with people who have a tendency to be really narcissistic. I'm really good at picking that kind of stuff up, and I do think you need a level of that just to go into politics.
Oh, sure.
To have the stomach, but I'm not getting a bad feeling from him. I feel like he's trying really hard, but he's had a lot of his time and energy wasted by people he didn't feel he could trust. And frankly, given what's happened in the last 20 years, I'm sure there were a lot of people that couldn't be trusted because they bought into the Democratic Party and all the money that was moving around USAID and things like that, USAID and things like that. So I think he handled what happened with Iran very well. He didn't fly the planes necessarily, but I do like that he came out swinging when they went on the attack. I think we'll find out more in time. I don't see any big issues coming with him at this point. So yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I like I said, I don't have anything against him at this point. But like I said, he hasn't really pushed me to the positive side either. I just don't get the Schwarzkopf. I just don't get the Powell. I don't get that kind of dynamic from him. But it's early, it's still early, and a lot of that could change. Let's talk about the Iran strike itself. A lot of people have said this was an act of war. And I don't want to quibble about what war is and what war isn't. I will say that airstrikes in and of and by themselves, to me anyway, are not necessarily entering into a form of war. And by the way, I don't believe we've actually declared war on anybody since World War II. So with that being said, airstrikes, one of the advantages to being a country like the United States that generally has air superiority over just about anybody, one of the advantages is when you have a radical regime of one kind or another, and they start making nuclear weapons, or they start threatening the border, or they start doing something, stacking their military on the border against one of our allies. It's much easier to be able to go in there and end in a pinpoint fashion those threats with very powerful airstrikes. And quite frankly, I don't understand why we didn't do that with Saddam. There was no reason to go in there and take the ground. When you start taking the ground, that's when things get ugly. That's when you start getting mired down in the local fighting. That's when you start taking on heavy casualties. That's when, you have to maintain a ground force, which means food and supplies and everything. That's when the real ugliness of war starts to set in. And I'll say this, Reagan, to his credit, when the Beirut explosion happened, he, for the most part, said, hey, these people are nuts and I'm out of here. And he stayed out of the Middle East for the most part, except for some strikes. I believe it was Libya.
Yeah.
Here again, just some controlled strikes. So for a superpower to be able to minimize threats that these radical dictators come up with without having to launch a full-scale war is part of the advantage of having a powerful air force. So in that context, hitting Iran in the way that we did, to me, is a measured way to control a threat that threatens our allies and potentially threatens ourselves. Do you have an opinion about that?
Oh yeah, I believe it was an act of peace. People get upset about, they want to make it about the good people that are part of a belief system or religion. But the truth is, whether people want to hear it or not, the truth is one of the reasons why people struggle to trust particular religions is because they have a radical element within them that is incredibly destructive and willing to do all sorts of horrendous things. Like they've lost their humanness in many ways. And it makes it very difficult, especially because that agenda is often hidden from us. And they'll slide into positions of power without actually showing you what they're really about until they get them. And you could say this about just about anybody. But the links at which they'll go to are terrifying. And so I think this was an act of peace. I think that some of the plans that they've had, we have cells in this country. We have lone wolves and wolf packs in this country who would love nothing more than to buy their way into paradise by taking out a bunch of Americans and making a big statement. And so if we can do anything that will help to minimize the terrorism around the planet and also prevent war from continuing or escalating, then I think that was the best way we could have done it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you got to keep in mind too that Iran is a state sponsor of terror. Okay, and we've been pussyfooting around Iran for 45 years. And I'm old enough to remember the hostage crisis, which was well over a year. It was like 444 days or something like that, something ridiculous.
Yeah.
And we've been pussyfooting around this regime now for a long time. And I ran into a lot of Iranians online on X who are really rooting for this because they want that regime out. They want the Iran of the early 1970s.
Oh yeah, before we intervened.
Yeah, Well, I've never really understood that. I mean, the Shah was Carter supported the Shah for sure. But a lot of people want to go back to those days because that's when Iran was started to look a lot like Miami.
Oh yeah, the women
Modern
used to
clothes
wear
and
modern.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that regime really held that against Carter. That's one of the reasons why they held the hostages right to the last second.
Oh, I tell you, Billy, I really believe my intuition tells me that was about the American election.
Yeah.
The length
Well,
of
but they
time
hated
they were
they hated
held.
Carter.
Yeah,
That's why they held him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think not we, but some people who wanted Reagan in there had something to do with that. That's just what my intuition's always said. Even
It
as
could
a
or couldn't be,
kid, I
but
remember thinking, this is weird. I felt like even as a child watching the situation, I felt like, wow, this seems like this is about getting Reagan in office and not necessarily about the hostages at this point.
I can't speak about the forces in the United States. I would hope that no American would be that sinister to leave American hostages a hostage. But
we've done worse.
Yeah, we've done. Yeah. But I can tell you for sure, there's no question that regime hated Carter for supporting the Shah. He wanted the Shah to stay. So they made things as bad for him as they could. And yeah, a strike like that would have been something that I'd like to have seen Carter do. So you could make the argument that this was 45 years in the coming. There was an attempt to save the hostages, but it didn't work.
I mean, come on, as a Democrat ever, like I remember being so incredibly disappointed in Obama, just for many reasons. Like, he's a great orator, and I don't dislike him as a person. I disliked the pretend show that he put on. And when he became wimpy in terms of our international relations, I was like, oh, you're not even a real president. You're like a faux president. The Democrats are always weak when it comes to defense, and we always have to have a strong defense, no matter what's going on in the world.
I would agree with that. That is for sure. Now, I got one more clip for you here, and this is the quote of the day. This is what would I call this? This is the put down of the day. This is worth its weight in gold. Now, I don't know how old this is. I mean, it's not like years old, but this was in regard to the tariffs, specifically with China, and the deal that was eventually made. Where the United States is at a certain rate and China's at a certain rate, and we're actually at a surplus, so we're better than where we started. And the Democrats were saying, "Oh, no, you accomplished nothing. The tariffs did nothing." And this was the response from our good friend Senator Kennedy.
Now, I've listened all day to some of my Democratic colleagues say that, well, we didn't get anything for it. If you believe that, I'm not saying you're the dumbest person in the world, but you better hope the dumbest person in the world doesn't die. It was a clear victory.
Oh, that is absolutely charming. I'm going to have to remember that one.
I know. I love him. We need his humor. We do in politics, because most of the people are just full of shit.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm going to have to remember that one because, boy, there's some people I could use it on. That is absolutely for sure. Okay, Cynthia, I know you got a lot going on. You always got a lot. Tell us a little bit about where people can find you and what's the latest stuff you got going on.
Yeah. People can find me at shamanisis.com, at shamanisis on all the social media platforms like X. And I am super excited. I just re-released A New American Dream, and it went back into the top 10 in social theory and philosophy, which I was psyched about. That is my book on how America can reignite the American dream through the age of AI, using this industrial revolution to revitalize the dream and make some really serious decisions that we need to make to help our kids have a future. So go check that out. And then, of course, I've got an event coming up September 4th in Boca Raton at the Countess de Hornley Theater. It's called the Soltech Future Festival. I am giving a talk and hosting the event. A lot of wonderful speakers talking about how we create a beautiful future in the age of AI. How do we create a conscious, beautiful future so that we have the kind of wellness we need, the kind of technology that we need, the kind of healthcare systems and, fashion that works for sustainability. So it's going to be really exciting. So go check it out. You can find it on shamanisis.com as well as my foundation website, soltechfoundation.org.
Well, that is absolutely fantastic. You can find me, Billy Dees, at Billy Dees on X, which is the old Twitter. That's kind of like my social media home. So do check me out there. There's also a Billy Dees Podcast Facebook page. You can check that out as well. That's a real small page, but there's a lot of people on there that enjoy some of the behind the scenes stuff. We talk about what we're doing from a marketing perspective. We don't just have, hey, check out our latest episode. It's wonderful. One of those kind of things. And you can find the Billy Dees Podcast anywhere podcasts are found. All the major platforms have carried us on the average for about 10 years. And we're on all of them, as far as I know. We're on all the major podcast platforms for sure. Do check us out coming up in the coming weeks. First of all, I do want to mention again, Stacey Rogers, her interview. She is running as a Republican for the governor of Kansas. If she does happen to win, she is going to be the first Republican female to be the governor of Kansas. So that is in our playlist. Do check us out on that. Lots of listens on that one. Thousands and thousands. I mean, that's been a really good episode for us. She is going to be on again. We've already talked. She is going to be on again. I have a couple of major possibilities in terms of conservative commentators who want to come on the show, and also some major podcasters as well. So stay tuned for that. And for all the latest updates, follow me on the former Twitter, now called X. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the program. Cynthia, thank you as always.
Thank you, Billy.
And we will talk to you again very, very.
Thank you for listening to the Billy Dees Podcast. Follow Billy Dees on X at Billy Dees for updates about the program.
Do you listen to music or audiobooks on streaming devices such as Sonos or Amazon speakers? How about on your car sound system? If you use Spotify, Audible, or Amazon Music on any of these systems, you can also listen to the Billy Dees Podcast the same way. Billy and his team go the extra mile to make sure our podcasts sound as good or better than anything on the radio. Listening to the Billy Dees Podcast has never been easier. You literally just have to ask.